Hello, we are here representing Paran Recreations, which is a not-for-profit in North Bennington, located in North Bennington, Vermont, and we are here to discuss some issues that are happening with the lake. I'm Alyssa Del Tufo. I'm the chair of Lake Paran's board.
I'm Camille Kaufman. I'm the director at Paran Recreations.
My name's Lindsay Rustino, and I'm the AmeriCorps Outreach Coordinator at Lake Paran.
So we wanted to start by giving you a little bit of an overview of the lake and of Paran Recreations. So Lake Paran is technically an impoundment. It was created in the mid-1800s, partly as a way to channel the water for use downstream in hydro plants, and the other was to deal with the railroad, which wanted to build their bridge and tracks along the southern side of the lake. So the Paran Recreations was started by some citizens in North Bennington in the 1960s as a not-for-profit organization to provide recreation to our local community and to steward the lake in terms of its environment, and to basically establish a location where people could enjoy the lake year-round, but mostly in the summer times. And we've existed as a not-for-profit for, I guess that's 60 years now, and until recently we only had summertime staff. In the last 2 years we've been able to get first an AmeriCorps with Camille, who is now transitioned into being our full-time director, and we have a second AmeriCorps now who is Lindsay Rustino over here. And one of the things that's allowed us to do is to operate our programs year-round, but more importantly to sort of take on the role of being the steward of the lake more seriously, because we have the staff resources to be able to do that. And the first thing that we have set ourselves to do is to try to save the lake, because as you'll hear much more information now, the weeds in the lake, as anyone who uses it knows, are beginning to really choke out other forms of life in the lake and make it very difficult for people to use the lake recreationally. So we're here because we love the lake, and we want to ask our community, what would you do without Lake Paran, and to try to engage you in a conversation and support around our campaign to address the weed problem in the lake. Now I'm going to turn it over to Camille, who's going to give us a little bit more of a background about this campaign.
Yes, so Lindsay and I this summer started the Save Lake Paran campaign, and if you've been around in North Bennington or Bennington, you might have seen our Save Lake Paran stickers that we printed up. It started with a petition that's on change.org. Currently we have almost 700 signatures from local supporters and concerned community members in support of doing something about the weeds in the lake. Now we have gone on an outreach campaign, which is including today at Cat TV, and we've been going to other stakeholders in talks of our outreach for the Save Lake Paran campaign, and we're really getting people in on the issue. So that's kind of where we're at.
Could you talk a little bit more about when the weeds really started to become a problem in the lake?
Yes, so the weeds showed up in Lake Paran, I think in the 1960s, and milfoil specifically is the plant that we're going to talk about today, showed up in the United States in the 1940s, and typically it travels by boat, fragmentation, so anytime the weed breaks off even a segment, it will replant in that exact area in the lake. So records show that milfoil showed up in Lake Paran in the 60s. Mm-hmm. And since then, I think in the 80s, we enacted some management, and also in the early 2000s, such as hand pulling, benthic barriers, and other sorts of very low effort management. But now we're really trying to do something about it, because in 2018 we had a survey done by a consultant, and they really outlined, and I'll show a picture right here, the concentration of milfoil in the lake. So now we know where it is specifically, and we can do something about it.
I just want to say one other thing for clarification, and that is, although Paran Recreations, if you ever have been there, know that we have a set of ropes that we set up where we sort of manage that area, and the state actually really controls the lake itself. We don't own the lake, we don't own the water, the state controls all of that. So although we're allowed to remove the weeds inside of our ropes, anything outside of the ropes is out of our control and is determined, what happens out there is determined by the state Department of Environmental Conservation.
Yes, DEC.
DEC.
We'll be saying that a lot.
Yeah, we'll be saying that a lot. And so this effort is not exclusively about trying to address issues related to Paran Recreations. These are issues that we're really dealing with that affect the entire community and are the rest of the lake outside of the roped area. Camille's, what she was mentioning about the benthic barrier and the hand pulling, those are things that we've been allowed to do inside of the swimming area, but we've never been allowed to do anything outside of that area, and that's part of what this campaign is all about, is trying to increase people's awareness of what's going on and to engage with the state around ways to remove the weeds so that we can keep the lake around, as was said and will be said again for future generations. So Lindsay, maybe you could talk a little bit about what is the problem with milfoil in that lake.
Well, there are quite a few problems with milfoil, and specifically in Lake Paran, the species of milfoil is called Eurasian water milfoil. Milfoil grows in very thick, dense patches and mat-like patches across the lake. These patches they block sunlight from reaching the water. This depletes oxygen for the fish and also overcrowds the native species of plants that provide food and shelter for the fish in the lake, and also other various wildlife species. Milfoil also has severe impacts on recreation, obviously. Over the summer, I don't think there was one person who didn't complain about the weeds. It really impacts people's ability to fish, boat, swim, really just enjoy the lake in general, especially in the summer. Not to mention the safety issues that these weeds can cause. They grow very long, very stringy, spread very rapidly. Easily people can get tangled in them. Lake Paran's home to a lot of summer camps where kids love to swim in the lake. The milfoil could have a negative impact on their safety, which is obviously a scary concern. Milfoil also catches sediment and runoff in Lake Paran. This causes the water to become more and more shallow. As the seasons change every year, the milfoil will die down, go to the bottom of the lake, and now the bottom of the lake is getting higher and higher while the water is getting lower and lower.
Right.
If nothing's done about this problem, and if we don't take control or if we don't take action, Lake Paran will unfortunately become a swamp in just a matter of decades.
Yeah, yeah, it's sort of like a cycle, right? I mean,
it's a vicious cycle.
Right? The weeds grow, the sediment sticks to the weeds, the bottom of the lake kind of keeps piling up, and the weeds just get closer and closer to the surface.
Not to mention how quickly Eurasian water milfoil grows and how easily it spreads.
Right. People have told me that lived here their whole life that at the neck of the lake, where the Paran Creek enters the lake, which is the eastern edge, that used to be 10 feet deep and crystal clear. And now it's about 14 inches deep and filled with, I mean, the weeds come right up to the surface of the lake. Certainly anyone that's boated or fished in that lake in the last couple of years has probably been very frustrated with that, and we're very concerned about those issues. Are there other kind of environmental issues that are impacting the growth of the weeds besides this sort of sediment weed cycle? Is there other runoff that is?
Paran Acres, the sewage system or the septic system contributes to some of the runoff in the lake. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
And yeah, we have seen an influx of phosphate and nitrate runoff from upstream in Paran Creek.
Yeah.
So those are all measures that we will be targeting because that contributes to the excessive growth of weeds. So our plan, which I'll talk about later, and our strategic plan for the weed management will include a hopefully citizen monitoring commission who will take frequent samples of water quality.
Yeah, as they say, you have to go upstream, right? You have to fix the upstream problems as well as the actual problems in the lake. So I'm not sure which one of you would like to address, like what is our plan? What's the sort of strategic plan that we're trying to pull together?
So we are actually working very closely with Michael Fernandez of the Bennington County Conservation District, and he's helping us write a strategic plan and engaging many stakeholders for that. So we have kind of a short-term, this happening hopefully this summer in 2023 plan, as well as a long-term plan. So I'll first talk about the short-term plan, which Lindsay and I have been doing a couple of public forums to our members and community stakeholders about.
Yeah, let me say, actually, they have a presentation that if anyone who's watching this would like to invite them to speak to their group,
yes, we'd be happy to come.
to do that.
So we've been gauging stakeholders. We want this to be very grassroots and not make any decisions without the community. But we have weighed our options as far as milfoil management this summer. So it would involve writing a permit to the state, being granted the permit, and then working with a third-party contractor to manage the milfoil this summer. We are looking at a treatment known as Priscilla Corps, which will treat the milfoil this summer. We'll also be conducting various outreach, continue with our public forums, and try to be as transparent as possible. And with that comes fundraising. So we have the Paran Plunge in February, which the funds for that will go to our treatment. And that's kind of what we have for the summer.
And then what are the longer term
The
ideas?
longer term are, well, continuing, especially with the outreach. But we do, so if you look at Lake Paran, not all of the weeds in it are milfoil.
Right.
We do have a good amount of pondweed, which I'll insert another map from our survey in 2018 that outlines the density of the weeds. So eventually this year, DEC will give us a permit to treat and manage milfoil and invasive, and then down the line we hope to treat and manage the pondweed, which is native. It is labeled as a nuisance aquatic species. And with that we have to figure out where the point source pollution is coming from to grow the excessive pondweed. So again, with the Water Quality Monitoring Commission, as well as spot treatments to our treatments this year, through suction harvesting and other biological and mechanical methods.
So it sounds like you do one thing and then you take a look at it and then you propose doing another thing. The state has to approve that. So it's a very well thought through process that gets a lot of questioning and thought from other folks around the state who are environmentalists and water quality people, right? Okay.
Yes. Everything is done with multiple stakeholders.
Could you talk about some other lakes use these harvesting boats? And I know we've discussed why that's not a good idea. Could you, because I think people around here, I certainly didn't know about those until I've seen them in other lakes. So why is that not a good idea? What have we learned about that?
Right, so those are called mechanical harvesters. Right. I've seen them in some of the lakes around Vermont. They're basically lawn mowers for the water. These, although it's a very quick solution, because Eurasian water milfoil spreads through fragmentation, really these mechanical harvesters in the long term make the problem much worse.
Right.
They don't get the weed at the root, they get it about halfway. The part that they cut off will just float, reroot, replant, and then shoot up again.
Right. And talk a little bit, either of you, about the suction harvesting or whatever that's called, the suction pulling.
It's known as suction harvesting, also known as diver-assisted suction harvesting, which is DASH. Basically, it's a vacuum for weeds. Divers go in and vacuum up the milfoil at the root. It's very targeted, and it's a mechanical option, so it's pretty safe. But that's to say that it won't come back. So it would be an annual thing that would probably have to happen in the lake.
And my understanding is that, for example, Lake St. Catherine has moved from using the harvester to the suction pulling, the DASH, for the same reasons that Lindsay's talking about, that used to be the state of the art, but a lot has been learned in the last, 20, 30 years about the longer term impact of these techniques. And so we're trying to make sure that we're not going backwards. We want to go forward. And I guess the other thing that I want to highlight from what Lindsay and Camille have said is that this is not a one shot, one summer success story. This is a long-term project where we need to start, and the sooner we start, the better, because the weeds are absolutely getting worse, and I assume that the climate change issues, things are definitely warmer, which I'm assuming brings more growth to the weeds. So the sooner we start, the more likely we will succeed. But this is something that, although the techniques may change, the strategy has to be, we need a 10-year strategy here to really be able to see a difference that's going to have sustainable impact on the lake, right? So we're here to talk to you about what we are trying to launch, but we will be back to tell you more about how these steps are going forward and what we need to do next and how you can be involved and support it. Are there other things that you think people should know about our campaign or about this summer, or what would you, anything go ahead. Go ahead. Yes, go ahead.
So I think it's a lot of questions we get when we bring up our treatment that we are heavily considering this summer, which is known as Priscilla Corps.
And why are we considering that treatment? Why is that
because, like you talked about with upgrading from suction harvesting, which we'll be doing, to spot treat in the next few years, not immediately this summer. Moving to the next best option and what we're staying with the science of what other lakes are doing.
And what comes highly recommended to us.
Highly recommended through science, peer review, conservation districts, and that is the use of Priscilla Corps, which has been used in over 10 Vermont lakes, including Lake Iroquois, Lake Dunmore, Lake Maury, etc. It was approved by the EPA in 2018, approved by Vermont DEC in 2019. I'll insert a link, hopefully, if I can do that, to the bottom that has a state toxicology report on it, stating that this is a low threat to wildlife. It is very unlikely to be a threat to wildlife because it is applied in very low dosages. It biodegrades naturally in up to 48 hours. That being said, if we were to treat on the lake with this Priscilla Corps, we would do comprehensive outreach, be very transparent with our members and swimmers and boaters. But the science says that it is a low threat, and it is very highly targeted to milfoil only, and it will not affect humans, other insects, species, native species, etc. So that's why we are going forward with this as of now. Yes. And like I said, I'll attach some other reports that we've done the research, and we've talked a lot about this because we really want to make sure we're being as safe as we can for the lake and the effects. So
and so my understanding is that assuming that this is successful this summer, then the following summer we may combine that, or maybe not use that treatment again,
Yes.
but then
So-
switch to the DASH
Right,
process,
exactly.
right?
So this summer we would pretty much, we're going forward, hopefully if we get the permit, with Priscilla Corps, and then the following years we wouldn't have to use it. We would do the spot treatment with the suction harvesting, because this has been shown in the other Vermont lakes that it is very highly effective, and it's more likely than just using the mechanical measures
Right.
to not come back in high concentrations.
I read the newsletter that Lake Iroquois puts out to its, I don't know if it has members or just the local community, and the reports in that are pretty glowing in terms of the transformation they've been able to see in their lake. I don't know how long they've been really trying to get the weeds out, but it sounds like they're being pretty successful. So, so there's hope,
Yes,
right?
there
There's
is.
hope, right? So, is there anything else, Lindsay or Camille, you feel that people should know?
I would just like to
Yeah.
reiterate that in order to use Priscilla Corps, the state would conduct surveys of the
Right.
water
Right.
both before and after the use of Priscilla Corps. And like Camille mentioned, we would have to get the proper permits,
Right.
and there are many hoops to jump through in order to use this solution.
Right.
And yeah, I will add just real quick that the conservation districts from all different counties, they all recommend this as well. So.
So I guess the only other thing, or the last thing I'd like to mention right now, is that all of this costs a lot of money, and as I mentioned before, it's not going to us. You know, we're not making any money on this. We're just trying to lead a charge, lead a campaign that will address the problems that our community faces and with this lake that we all love. And so I just am trying to make that line for people so that it's not about Paran Recreations, it's about Lake Paran. And so if you are interested in supporting us or asking more questions or contributing time or treasure, please get in touch with us. We are very happy to engage with people around this. It's really important to us to, again, as Camille said many times, make this as much of a community effort as possible, since it's a community resource that we all love and use, and to make the work as transparent as possible, but as effective as possible as well, so that we don't lose this really important part of our area and of a place where our community likes to gather. So
Yes, and with that, I'll add just some links that you can follow after watching this. You can sign our petition if you haven't already on change.org/Lake Paran, or excuse me, change.org/Save Lake Paran. You can also collect a sticker. We'll have these out at the lake, and we'll be around, so we'll be passing these out. Stick them anywhere. And then you can also make a donation at lakeparanvt.org/Save Lake Paran. Again, that's lakeparanvt.org/Save Lake Paran. And follow us on Facebook, Instagram at Lake Paran. Great.
good. Thank you. Thank you both
Yep.
for everything
Thank
you're
you.
doing. Thank you.